A very good evening to you. I'm Lisa Lord. In our headlines, Barbados beefing up its resilience to natural disasters and ability to recover. Parliament earmarks 2 prized pieces of land for tourism development. Former Jamaican Prime Minister Edward Seaga is dead. And in sports, the Windies convincingly win their final warm-up match before this week's start to the World Cup.
News Night Headlines was brought to you compliments Omega XL.
Broadcasting from our studios in the Pine St. Michael, this is CBC News Night, starting now.
And in our top story, the Caribbean region will soon be able to benefit from $49.6 million to help tackle climate and disaster risk. This was revealed when the 4-day Understanding Risk, or UR Caribbean Conference, was launched late last evening at the Barbados Museum. Our Shane Jones was there and joins us live now to give us an update. And Shane, I understand that it was quite the gathering.
Yes, Lisa, over 500 delegates from 20 Caribbean countries are here. And over the next few days, they will be discussing priorities and solutions to, as you quite rightly said, tackle climate and disaster risks. The international delegation is also heavily represented with a number of experts in various fields of disaster management and climate change.
Standing risk, and how does that money come into play? It's a lot of money.
Right, so UR is a platform for collaboration, sharing and innovation in identifying and assessing disaster risk. Essentially, it's a global and open community of more than 8,000 experts who share knowledge, experience and best practices. And Lisa, you know this community is very important to us because natural disasters in our region have become more frequent and intense because of climate change. Just cast your memory back to the past few years, with Dominica and Antigua being foremost in our memory. Now, while citizens right across the globe all contribute to the factors that lead to global warming and climate change, which have these knock-on effects for some of the heightened storm activity we've been seeing, the Caribbean's contribution is small, almost unrecognizable percentage. So it's only fair we receive some funding to help us deal with the issues that arise. So that's how we get to the money part of it now. That price tag of $49.6 million that was mentioned at the top of the story is broken down into 3 regional programs that will support Caribbean countries to plan for long-term resilience and climate-smart growth strategies. Let's take a look at them. Now, Lisa, $31 million will go towards the Caribbean Regional Resilience Building Facility, which will support 15 countries by providing technical assistance to mainstream resilience. Then another $3.4 million from the European Union will support Caribbean overseas countries and territories in assessing their financial exposure to disasters and feasibility of participating in insurance mechanisms. And finally, $15.2 million for the Canada Caribbean Resilience Facility, which is designed to boost capacity in 9 countries to achieve more effective and coordinated disaster preparedness, recovery and resilience building, and public financial management practices. Now, the delegates viewed a heart-rending video which showed the devastating after effects of recent hurricanes in the Caribbean, and in a passionate keynote speech, Prime Minister Mia Amor-Motley said when the region doesn't get assistance, it feels invisible and sometimes dispensable.
How many people will keep us front of mind after a video as you have just seen? Or does it evoke the emotions of the moment, then to surrender once again to the politics of the day?
Pulling no punches, the Prime Minister says the Caribbean has had to face difficulties and risk for the entire postmodern settlement of its islands. She was also very frank about the lack of access to funding from international counterparts. Ms. Motley was forceful in saying that the rest of the world must acknowledge that the Caribbean is on the front line of a battle it did not start, as we hardly contribute to climate change.
When you return to your individual capitals or to your individual organizations, the continued belief that countries can be graduated on the basis of middle income status purely on GDP and precluded from access to critical funding to be able to modernize the infrastructure. In the face of inherent vulnerability, has really to become a historic topic rather than a fight that we are continuing to wage on a daily basis.
Now, the conference was organized by the World Bank and Caribbean Countries Director Tassin Saeed says building up resilience goes far beyond just after a hurricane hits.
Resilience in the context of the immense natural resource that this region possesses, which is quite unsurpassed, and that is your beautiful oceanic resources that can, over time, help and contribute to A, diversification of the economy, B, creating more jobs, and C, enhancing more tourism.
And Lisa, these activities over the next few days at the conference will lay the foundation for decisions to be taken at the 11th Caribbean Conference on Comprehensive Disaster Management later this year. Back to you.
And thank you so much, Shane, as always. Well, turning our attention now to Parliament, which today approved important land acquisitions that will clear the way for major tourism development projects at Bay Street, the city. Our Ryan Broom has been following today's debate and joins us now with more. Good evening to you, Ryan.
Good evening, Lisa. Good evening, viewers. Well, that's right. Now, fresh off debate on the acquisition of land at Bay Street, the city, for the construction of the Hyatt Hotel, government has moved to approve the vesting of 2 parcels of land along that key stretch of Bridgetown for the purpose of tourism development. Now, one of the spots is 69 square kilometers and the other 509.9 square kilometers. Minister of Housing, Lands and Rural Development George Payne, as he led off debate on the resolution, updated Parliament on plans for that land.
This is a transaction which we inherited. It is not one that we have forged on any particular individual, as might be gleaned from some of the comments in the press. And this resolution is just putting Visions Limited, having got the property vested in the Barbados Tourism Investment Inc., putting Visions in the position whereby they would not have any problems with respect to the transfers.
Now, the Carlisle Bay area, located in historic Bridgetown, has been identified as an area that presents many opportunities. In his contribution to the debate, Minister of Tourism and International Transport Kerry Simmons said the area is ideal for the build-out of more hotels. Now, currently, he said, it is not being utilized in a way that enables Barbados to reap maximum returns. He says the area, which is one of the most attractive beachfront locations, is populated by abandoned structures and boats.
So if one wishes to have a rebirth of the area, if one wishes to have a reinvigoration of the city of Bridgetown and the constituency of St. Michael South, Mr. Speaker, sir, one has to therefore confront in a serious way these opportunities that lie before us. But even beyond that, for the more short-sighted, I speak to them now. One has to be able to see, Mr. Speaker, a growth trajectory for the Barbados economy, an opportunity for us to have investment in 2 kilometers of beachfront, which we have just allowed to lie idle.
And Labour Minister Colin Jordan says if tourism is to continue to be one of the lead drivers of economic growth for the country, there must be investment in this sector. However, he says with any such investment, the people must ultimately be the greatest beneficiaries, and government is committed to this ultimate goal through the land acquisition at Bay Street.
Communities where we're not necessarily talking about people just getting employment, but the infrastructure around the communities, whether it is drainage, whether it relates to play parks, whether it relates to the refurbishment of theaters or other places of public interest, whatever these gains may be, we as a government, Mr. Deputy Speaker, are we are placing a renewed emphasis on the matter of planning gains.
Meanwhile, in his contribution, opposition leader Bishop Joseph Atherley says government must be fully transparent with the people of Barbados regarding the planned development at Bay Street, St. Michael. Now, that is expected to eventually see the construction of the Hyatt Hotel. He says it is especially so given government's position on the matter when in opposition.
Clearly, the government struggles with the charge that when in opposition, it raised a lot of questions around the operations, the undertakings, the enterprises, the endeavors of a particular individual developer in this country. Now, in the office of government, that seems not to be the case. Now, this voice that speaks in this chamber on behalf of the official opposition has never said that this government or any government in Barbados should not deal with any particular developer.
I should note that those land acquisitions were approved. So Lisa, those are just some of the highlights of parliamentary debate today. And I can also tell you that up to news time, a new debate had started on the Utilities Amendment Bill 2019. It's back to you, Lisa.
Thank you so much, Ryan. Well, former Jamaican Prime Minister Edward Seaga has died. He passed away earlier today in the United States, where he was receiving medical treatment.
Jamaica's former Prime Minister, Edward Seaga, passed away around 2 p.m. this afternoon in a Miami hospital, where he was being treated for cancer and related complications. Today also marks his 89th birthday. Seaga had been hospitalized for almost 3 weeks after falling ill while traveling. He served as Jamaica's 5th Prime Minister from 1980 to 1989 and was the Jamaica Labour Party's leader from 1974 to 2005. And in his tribute to Seaga, political analyst Peter Wickham says he'll be remembered as one of the outstanding stalwarts on the political scene.
I think the fact that he lived as long as he did, well into his 80s, and he continued to loom large as a figure regionally and nationally and regionally in Jamaica in terms of leadership is significant. He would have been involved up to the most recent election campaign in a minimal way, but nonetheless involved. So I think it's the end of an era. And definitely he leaves a legacy of leadership and certainly leadership of the Jamaica Labour Party. And I imagine that he goes to his grave now with somewhat of a smile on his face because the Jamaica Labour Party has finally been able to restore itself.
Former Prime Minister Seaga was also instrumental in the Jamaican music industry as a record producer and owner of West India Records Limited. His death was officially announced on Twitter by Jamaican Prime Minister Andrew Holness, who revealed that the necessary arrangements were being made to have Mr. Seaga's body flown back to Jamaica at the earliest possible time. Lorna Jones, CBC News.
Well, the court-martial case against a senior member of the Barbados Defence Force got underway at the BDF's headquarters in St. Anne's Fort yesterday. Lieutenant Coast Guard David Herwood faces a number of charges, including 2 counts of communicating with the enemy. Sharika Griffith was present for day 1 of the proceedings and filed this story.
Charges are that sometime in January 2018, Lieutenant Coast Guard David Herwood, without lawful authority, communicated with the enemy, namely a known drug trafficker. Also, that between the 7th and 10th of August 2018, he knowingly communicated with a person using a BDF mobile phone. The charge sheet further contends that being a commissioned officer of the Barbados Defence Force, having knowledge of a threat to the life of a junior member of the BDF, he neglected to inform his superiors, and that between the 1st of January 2014 and the 30th of September 2018, he conducted unauthorized information gathering operations at various places in Barbados, regarded as conduct unbecoming of a commissioned officer of the BDF. Lieutenant Herwood entered a not guilty plea to all 4 charges. The court heard from 4 witnesses, including Major Junior Brown, who was part of the team which investigated Lieutenant Herwood's alleged crimes. He revealed the details of an interview conducted with the accused. These included that he had been approached by someone involved in drug trafficking and that he had reported this and other incidents to several commanding officers. Lieutenant Herwood also reportedly met with someone who alleged they had given another member of the force $20,000 to provide them with information that had not panned out, and that they, quote, was going to go for him but did not bother. During his cross-examination of Major Brown, which lasted more than 2 hours, Defense Counsel Attorney-at-Law Vincent Watson suggested Major Brown had used the weight of his authority to coerce his client to make a written statement. It was also revealed that Lieutenant Harewood had a number of grievances and requested a transfer from the Coast Guard several years ago. If found guilty, Lieutenant Harewood, who has been with the BDF for more than 17 years, could spend up to 2 years in prison. Sharika Griffith, CBC News.
Well, further mass layoffs are unlikely under Phase 3 of the Homegrown Barbados Economic Recovery and Transformation, or BERT program. Minister in the Ministry of Finance, Ryan Strawn, made the revelation on CBC TV8's program, The People's Business. Now, Phase 3 of the program got underway in April and runs until December next year. Mr. Strawn says that focus is being placed on statutory corporations.
Pretty much refinement in terms of the way that things are delivered at some of the statutory corporations. Does that mean that every person will still be in the job in the way that they were doing in the past? Definitely not. Persons will have options to some degree in terms of whether they want to move forward as an employee of the corporations, or be as we are looking to enfranchise people in terms of how we deliver those services. And so this particular phase now is just to make sure that the service and the mandate of the institutions in terms of what they're supposed to deliver, that they're actually in a position to do that.
Doubling the resources of the police force alone will not solve the current crime situation. Attorney General Dale Marshall points to a societal failure, one he says the Royal Barbados Police Force cannot deal with.
Policing, for the most part, is an ex post facto response. Police respond to crime. In some respects, they're proactive, but the truth of the matter is that we need to deal with the root causes of this criminal behavior. As AG, we've passed legislation to keep the individuals who are doing firearm crimes, to keep them without bail for 2 years. We've done all those kinds of things.
And opposition spokesman Scott Weatherhead says that average Barbadians feel life has become harder.
Transportation is the same. Problems. Bus fares are increased by 75%. Water rates are increased. Fuel taxes increase. Departure tax increase. Income taxes increase. Land taxes increase. They gave a 5% increase to public workers and then took it back in the form of many other taxes. So while you could say that they're checking the boxes on the IMF program and doing all of the things that the IMF asked of them to do, including making sure that they paid tax returns and settled their debts and so forth to people. These things were done not because this government felt bad for people, but they were done because it was part of the program they signed into and requirements within the program.
In news from across the region now, the Anglican Church of the province of the West Indies has a new head. Bishop Gregory Howard got the nod over his fellow bishops at the 2019 Provincial Synod held in Trinidad and Tobago. And we hear more in this CNC3 TV report.
Archbishop Gregory has been head of the Anglican Church in Jamaica and the Cayman Islands. He succeeds Barbadian Dr. John Holder, who retired in February of last year. In a short address to the media following his election, Archbishop Gregory said there were many topical issues in the Caribbean on which the church needed to lend guidance.
At the moment, we are dealing with issues related to abortion. We are dealing with issues related to marijuana. We are dealing with issues related to human trafficking. And as a church, we certainly have to be a part of the engagement of the wider society, bringing some perspectives to bear on these things.
The Archbishop also said the church could not ignore the situation in Venezuela and its potential impact on the Caribbean.
We can't be here in Trinidad and ignore that, because I think you are experiencing it at this point more than anyone else. And we certainly already are recognizing the hospitality which Trinidad is engaged in, but there has to be a limit to that. But we also have to recognize that there are reasons why people are coming here, and that some of the solutions that are being articulated internationally are not acceptable.
Grenada's Pretty Larceny Unit is investigating an alleged report that needles were found inside of plantains a housewife had bought and prepared. It's believed that the plantains were stolen, as we hear from GBN.
The ripe plantains were bought from a market vendor on Saturday. Assistant Supervisor within the Pretty Larceny Task Force, Constable Wayne Frank, explained to GBN that it was only on preparation of the plantain the following day for the Sunday meal that the deadly object was discovered. Frank says from all indications, this is definitely a case of pretty larceny.
The housewife would have purchased this at the central market, go home with it, cook and realize that they are foreign bodies. If you look closely, you can see that there is a needle in the plantain, right? The person who would have sold that plantain did not genuinely obtain it. They would have stolen it. They would have stolen the whole bunch, right? They did not genuinely obtain that plantain because the farmer will never sold something that he knows he has tinted. So this has to have been stolen.
Although an arrest is yet to be made, it is very possible that more than one person can face charges. According to law, Constable Frank explains that it is also a violation for a farmer to harm an individual stealing his property.
So you being the farmer, you still are not the law, you're not supposed to tint your produce. You're not supposed to do this. It's still considered a crime. You do not have the authority to take the law into your hand. You still have to get the police. The most important thing is that you identify the person, you know who it is, and you call the police.